the topic is Prout in Practice, a session of Prout Day for today, July 1st. Next. Did you optimize your video? Maybe it's my, okay. So, you know, the command of the day is for moralists of the world unite. And for moralists to be created, we need leaders. We need the forum to work. So, okay. So we have to tend to our own gardens and we have to grow our own gardens. Next slide. Yes, I'm currently in Washington, D.C. area. Next slide, please.
I already went to the next slide, Dhruva.
Okay, it's taking me a while. I'll just say, you can just tell me it's done.
Yeah.
So before we get into cooperatives, it's important to emphasize that cooperatives are social and economic institutions that require work, care, guidance, and of course, cosmic grace. The overall social, economic, and the legal systems need to be in place to properly support cooperatives. And today, not all parts of the world, including parts of the United States, support them. The US does have thousands of cooperatives in the areas of food, agriculture, especially. Experience and learning can be done immediately by joining your local grocery cooperative, for instance. And for those future cooperatives, quality leadership is needed, especially in a proudest economy. Next slide.
Done.
Yep. In any case, leadership is required. So let's talk briefly about how we can prepare to be the leaders for the cooperative era, the Prout economy, and the Ananda Parivara that we seek. So remember, leadership is not inborn. It's not acquired from your family traits necessarily. It's not in your genes. It's not because you've been a Margie for 10 years or 20 years. It's because you've worked on it. You've put yourself in a position to practice it and learn it. Okay, so next slide. Places for Ananda Margis to get the skills and experience with leadership. Of course, you can always take classes, take training. You in Ananda Marga in the mission, you can get experience with leadership in our UTCs, our utilization training camps, our Save It All camps, or educational training camps. You can get experience importantly, in Ananda Marga programs and projects, units, and book fees. There's so many opportunities to take the lead, to get things done, to work in coordination with your community of Margis, with the sympathizers in your area. Theory and the practical support from non-governmental agencies and governmental agencies that promote cooperatives is also key, because there are good sources of cooperative knowledge and skills. Certainly, as I mentioned earlier, you can join a co-op and you can volunteer at a co-op, and you can benefit from a food cooperative, for instance, immediately. And there's pretty much a food cooperative in every community, or every so-called progressive community. So next slide. So another way is Ananda Margis working together in our Guru's mission. I basically mentioned that. And there are many avenues for that. And I know this is repetition from previous classes I've given, but I cannot emphasize more. We have so much work to do, so much opportunity that Baba has built into the system that we can utilize and grow and serve others. So there are projects and programs, the master units, and many other things. There's, again, the Bhukti units, the diocese, regional, and sectorial structures. You can volunteer contributions of your time, your funds, and your loving care. There are advisory committees and working boards, or ACB. And there's also, of course, the structures of Bhukti Pradhan, Bhukti Committee, as other great training sources. Next slide. So some good examples of how to practice Prout and Ananda Marga itself. Disaster relief services, which is basically the emergency basic needs delivery. Permanent Relief Society, Amo Presso, is for long-term development. Excellent way to practice Prout. Medical and services, essential to Prout. Basic needs, cooperative department. There is a cooperatives department. And if we're eager to do cooperatives, then both Proutis Universal and Ananda Marga can have their programs, possibly working in conjunction with one another. But there's a way to go forward right now. Of course, in Ananda Marga, there's the industry department, commerce department, master units. Cannot emphasize more the need to develop the master units. Next slide. And some other good ways to practice Prout in Ananda Marga itself: farming and related activities, schools and homes, ideological movements, whether they be Dharma, promoting Dharma, Dharma Prachar, meditation classes, asana classes, Rawa, and all the cultural programs. We have a number of other cultural and art sections in the mission. Of course, Renaissance Universal also promotes Prout and develops the ideas of Prout. And just generally enhancing and protecting the rights and existence of the afflicted and exploited. I could say maybe we have the Save It All, that would help with that. And that is Proutist related. Next slide. So moving together, working together, serving together. It was said earlier, Sadvipas do not work alone. Prout is based on spirituality. It's grounded in morality, but it's done. It's performed socially. It's done in a collective manner, not in an individualistic manner. Therefore, Proutists need to be disciplined, coordinated, connected, constantly learning with a universal outlook, tolerant of others, not tolerant of exploitation of any kind. Proutists find others to work with, to meet with, to aspire with. Proutists work collectively together. It takes time. Time plus our effort has to be invested. The earlier the better. Do not delay. Next slide. So with our personal and collective investment, we will be prepared to start, lead, and work with and in cooperatives. In the meantime, through our Ananda Marga time of training and serving, we will be prepared, and services and relief are supplied to the needy. And at the same time, Ananda Marga will grow as well. So please utilize Ananda Marga for the venue, the platforms, the structure of working together, of investing the time and the dozens and hundreds of hours that are required to get things done. Do it with other Margis. Do it by Zoom. Do it on a large scale. Do it on a small scale. Next slide. So here's some fundamentals for cooperative. Each and every worker of the cooperative is an owner with an equal share, or that's their membership in the co-op. It's an equal share each owner has. In comparison, in a corporation, when you're an employee, you have no share of ownership unless you're with special hybrid businesses where they have employee stock ownership programs, or you just happen to be given gifts of a shareholder, or you have the wealth to buy hold shares. So in cooperatives, this applies to everyone in the organization: laborers, designers, managers, everyone. Each owner has one vote. Not everyone is paid the same, but in Prout, we have a maximum wage. We have ways to keep everybody level, but no one far outreaching others in terms of wages and salaries. The managers may receive a higher wage or salary. Owners may be required to buy their reasonable and rational economic share in the cooperative, a share. Each person has a share, but sometimes you have to capitalize your cooperative, and you may be required to put in some kind of capital to make that share work. If you don't have the money, sometimes the cooperative will lend you the money and you pay it back over years or months. But that capitalization will be the same for everyone involved. The cooperative is controlled by its own constitution and other governing documents. Local, state, Samaj, and possibly national regulations will also interplay in those controls. So what are some of the types of cooperatives? Next slide. There are producer cooperatives. This is generally in the US, and from my experience and scope of understanding. Producer cooperatives, consumer cooperatives, marketing cooperatives, service cooperatives, and housing cooperatives. Housing cooperatives are not to be confused with homeowners associations. Next slide. Okay, so we'll get into a little bit on producer cooperatives. There's different types of producer cooperatives. Of course, there's different producers and manufacturers in society. So we could cover that, vehicles, cars, trucks, etc. Products from agriculture, all kinds of agricultural goods come out of the making of products from those sources of paper, wood, textiles, clothing. There can be producer cooperatives of electronic equipment and household goods and other tools. Those are just some examples. Of course, there can be designers and architects who work together and they create a cooperative, a producer cooperative, but it wouldn't be a manufacturing cooperative. Or say for a software development company, it could be owned cooperatively. Next slide. Then in consumer cooperatives, these are the most popular from the average American or North American. Owners are the shoppers in the cooperative. And a grocery store, for instance, owned by its shoppers who sign up to be a member. REI, Recreational Equipment Incorporated. REI sells sporting goods and that sort of thing. It's a cooperative owned by its members, by its shoppers, and or other people can shop there. I'm a member of it. I get a dividend every year. It's approximately 10% of what I spend there. And other retail outlets, of course. Now, one thing about consumer cooperatives, this is just the members are the consumers, but it doesn't mean that the workers themselves cannot have their own cooperative. For instance, they could be the management entity that runs the consumer cooperative, and that management entity could be cooperatively owned as well, a workers cooperative. Next slide. So marketing cooperatives, this is something that's come up in the agricultural area in the US. It's very big. There are thousands of cooperatives in the agricultural area. And these are, let's say, these are all in Iowa, for instance. I'm quite certain there's hundreds and hundreds of agricultural cooperatives in Iowa, the state of Iowa in the US. Now, what happens there is that, okay, the farmers are good at growing their food, but do they have the funds to buy the big equipment? Do they have the funds to put up silos for storage? Do they have the funds and the resources to get their product to market? Well, this is when a marketing cooperative or an agricultural cooperative really is smart, because they share the marketing costs and systems, and those, or they do them on behalf of their members. And for instance, their storage facilities may be purchased, built, and near highways, railway, rivers, wherever those goods are being transported. But that's a good place to locate. It wouldn't be on the individual farmers. Next slide. Service cooperatives. They're, many enterprises will have their own services covered by their own major cooperative or their own comprehensive cooperative. But when you have a home, for instance, you may need to have a cleaner or a cook, or you may need to have assistance with a nanny. Well, there's nothing keeping those nannies and those janitors and those people from forming their own cooperatives and having their own a service entity. So I call that a service cooperative. Next slide. We come to housing cooperatives. So this is a homeowner community. It's distinct again from the HOA or the homeownership association. And the distinction is that in a homeowners association, which I find myself in here, and Devika and I have a property, we own only our structure. We do not own the land in which our structure is sitting. We share ownership of that through a board of directors of the common area. We share ownership of it, but we don't control at all the common area. The board of directors does, but we control everything within our walls of our property. We own the walls of our property. Another homeowner association type is condominium. So when we talk, the Margies are talking about, oh, we want to start a housing cooperative with the Margies. We want to work together. Well, in this case, you need to understand that it is its own entity. It's its own animal. For instance, each homeowner is a member of the housing cooperative. Each owner has the right to elect or vote for the board of directors. One ownership or one membership is one vote. One property is one vote. And so you vote for your board of directors. The board may hire the managers if you need one, and they conduct the business. They hire the contractors. They take care of everything. This is go back to cooperatives. Of course, we're back. Actually, both apply. What is different here with and this applies to both homeowners associations and cooperatives in terms of electing board of directors, et cetera, et cetera. But the big difference between a housing cooperative and a regular homeowners association or condominium association, the big thing is that housing cooperatives can decide who is to be an owner or not. They have the ability to control. So as a Proutist community or a Margie community, it's likely that you want to be living around and with strong sympathizers. You don't want to have a member of your cooperative suddenly sell out to just the bidder for the highest price, because that may invite in an investor who rents it out to people you really don't want to share your collective space with. So when, let me go on here. Owners may not select and make the final decision on who their buyer is going to be, who the new owner is going to be. And that can, from the traditional form of ownership in the world, of property, this is outlier. And not a lot of people are comfortable with that. For instance, there's I'm associated with someone who is going to be part of a housing cooperative, and they're going to buy in, or it's going to be gifted to them. But in the end, it's up to the cooperative community to decide whether they're worthy to be in that. Also, like I think you remember John Lennon. John Lennon was living in the late John Lennon was living in New York City. His wife still lives there, and they own a cooperative. And in those cooperatives in New York City, they are very wealthy, and it's very famous. They can exert their authority. The board can of that cooperative, and approve this person to buy in or that, and reject others. So there are other legal distinctions that separate it from the traditional home ownership. Next slide. So what is the place of cooperatives in a Prout economy? Well, any enterprise larger than a few employees, or more than simply being a sole proprietorship or a small family operation, will be compelled to allow every worker to have a share of ownership in a Prout economy. In a Prout economy, cooperatives are the social and economic engine. Most businesses will be cooperatively owned and operated. Cooperatives are the lifeblood of the community and will supply or ensure the delivery of all basic needs of their owners, their workers, and their immediate family members. They will guarantee and assure that each and every one has proper and sufficient food, medical care, education, transportation, and housing, and any extras per the needs of the member owner and the healthy status of the cooperative and the local economy. So this extra, as we call atiriktam, surplus, more the luxuries. Of course, the 5 basic needs also now today, of course, includes, well, we're missing one here. I said transportation. What are we missing? We're missing food, medical care, education, housing, and help me out. If somebody remembers, tell me. So next slide.
Clothing.
I'm sorry?
Clothing.
Clothing, thank you, yes. Oh, I'm feeling naked now. So, okay, next slide, more. So places more on place of cooperatives in the Prout economy. So they're at the root of economic democracy. This is key. We've heard of economic democracy. Why are we promoting economic democracy? Because we're promoting economic control, or democratic control of the economic process. And when the cooperative is at the core of the economy, and it's democratically controlled by the membership in your cooperative, then you have control over the wealth of the community, and you keep it in your community. Those shareholders that are now known in capitalism, who live off in Manhattan or in Hong Kong or in on an island in the Caribbean, or distant from the communities where your business share is, then that compels the businesses to run for the profit of their shareholders and not for this. And it removes the stakeholders from the equation, the local community, the workers. So this is the importance of cooperatives as the basis for economic democracy. Because the owners, the workers, the members have democratic control over their ownership and their corner of the economy. They will benefit 100% from the profits, the financial fruits of their labor and input. No outside investors will have a share of the profits, nor will they dictate the policies, procedures, and the governance of the cooperative. But you have to be clear that there may be boards in a proud economy. There may be industry boards that control all the cooperatives in the field of car manufacturing. They'll set standards, etc. And there will be some controls, government regulations, and other compliance requirements to protect, the economy, the flora, the fauna, and the environment. These costs, such as environmental protection and other things like research and development, will not be avoidable. So these costs also will need to be factored into the cost of business, which in capitalism, they are often excluded unless they're most often excluded. So human rights will be protected, and economic and other discriminations that are current and rampant in capitalism will not be possible. Next slide. So more and more. So cooperatives are not owned by anyone other than the cooperative members, including not owned by AMPS, PU, or any other organization or any governmental agency. Sri Baba, our Mahasadvipra, gave many points on the place of cooperatives in a proud economy. We have lots of study, and we can do a lot more seminars on the subject and discussions and debates and symposia. So we can begin cooperatives now, particularly where legal structures and regulations exist. It's not rocket science. But it is a special social process of inclusion and participatory governance. And these alone can be challenges that need care and nurturing, and specifically in the need for proper leaders, not only who know technically about the industry, which is important, or who know about cooperatives, which is also important, but how to relate to people and how to lead people, and how to lead people who are coming from a situation of either poverty or maybe from wealth that they've known in the capitalist era. So those leaders are critical, and that's why we need to be having more and more involvement of Ananda Margis in their leadership capacities, or involving them in partnership with other leaders in the mission for training. We are a leadership making mission, and we need to respect that. Next slide. So here's a graphic that basically gives you an idea where cooperative sits in the overall economy. The cooperatives are the core in the center. It's the bulk of the economy. There are also key industries that will not be cooperatively owned. That will be society owned, you could say. They will be there, and they are there, but they're owned by capitalists and shareholders. The energy sector, mining, metal manufacturing, major transportation system, major communication systems are key industry areas in the proud economy. At the lower in the green there, we are identifying the sole proprietor, the mom and pop operation, the single family business. And in these small operations, this is where a lot of creativity and independent thinking will be generated. And once those small businesses get larger, for instance, there may be a threshold that once you have goes beyond one family, or maybe you have 5 employees, then once that happens, then you'll be compelled to create or convert your small business into a cooperative and move into the cooperative section of the proud economy. Next slide. So in summary, cooperatives are the backbone of a proud economy and economic democracy. So we can learn to become leaders needed for promoting and starting cooperatives, including the resilience to manage the social needs of participatory economic democracy. We have much to learn, and our involvement in the parallel structure that the mission provides It provides a training ground in the API system and the many service options that Sri Sarkar founded. It's also an avenue to create leaders, to serve society and the universe physically, mentally, and spiritually. Create cooperatives from the ground up, however small or large, without any delay. Next slide. So that is a presentation, and I've lost